I continue with teen court, and I stay very passionate about our program because I feel like it truly makes a difference. Every time we get a referral into teen court and they succeed out of a program, that means another youth is diverted away from the juvenile justice system. It breaks the school to prison pipeline. It gives all the youth in our program a better opportunity to advance themselves without a mark on their record. We get to touch the lives of kids through counseling, through peer mediation. All of these resources are kind of at their fingertips without getting a mark on their record. It's just a very meaningful job. I feel like I'm actually doing something every day that actually touches people's lives. So yeah, I'm very passionate about that because I actually feel like I'm improving things daily. I think one story that always comes to mind as a success story through teen court is actually bizarrely a failure that turned into a success. We had a youth that had gone through a diversion program, had re-encountered law enforcement while in our program, so unfortunately we had to decline him, and it was really hard for us because we didn't want to, but there are certain rules we had to follow. And he ended up having to face some more serious sanctions and doing detention time. And when he was released, he was actually involved in a shooting, and he was actually shot in the face, and we thought he was gonna pass. And it was really heavy and hard. And I think the coolest thing was, flash forward a year later, it was actually during COVID time when they did a very bizarre high school graduation at the racetrack, and he graduated high school. And you're talking about a kid that I wasn't even sure had enough credits to finish middle school. He managed to get himself together, and we saw him walk across this bizarre stage, and he came up to us and he was like, "Thank you so much for standing by me," because even through his decline, like, we made referrals and stuff like that, and he really reinforced that his time and understanding that he had gotten a chance and he had people behind him even when he kept stumbling. And the fact that he was graduating high school, he always sticks out because he took the hardest way possible, and he recognized that there were people behind him. And like I said, even though he didn't make it through our program, it still stuck with him because he knew we weren't throwing him out because we gave up on him. We were trying to give him the most resources possible. It reminds me that there is good in the world. As much as we see a lot of negative, I see so many families come together. I see the love between families, even at the hardest times. I see, defenses come down. I see real work happening, and I see real effort from families. And even though we have a lot of situations where it's not these families' best day or month or year, being able to witness people really sticking together and, being with their child or kids really trying to improve, it has really affected me to see that I feel like we are good at the core. Like, even through trials and tribulations, people are genuinely good and they have good intentions even when they stumble. So I think that reminds me every day that, it is worth it. I think teen court it affects the community and our volunteers, regardless if they're defendants in our program, because it humanizes people. I think through the media, especially with social media, there's a lot of assumptions made and dramatizations of, juveniles that get in trouble in juvenile detention and all these bad kids. And I think when you come to teen court, you really do connect the human with the charge and understand that, these are kids that are making mistakes and they're not these throwaway kids. And as far as the community, sometimes even the option of giving somebody a second chance, just in not having these people feel like they're getting thrown away, like, they will take their second chance and they do want to improve the community, and they will take that, opportunity to be a better person and go back out in the community and do better because, they weren't thrown out and they were given that second chance. So I think it's a big deal to make sure that people are seen and heard, and I think teen court does that. I've seen on two different ends, I've seen a lot of defendants and participants take lessons from teen court, whether it's from our case managers or judges or, just being in front of their peers, and really use that knowledge to move forward. But I've also seen a lot of volunteers. I've had student volunteers that end up, going to school for criminology or constitutional law because they enjoy their time in teen court and the mock trials and like want to become lawyers because they kind of get a taste of the judicial system. And I think that's important to humanize the judicial system because it affects all of us. And I think a lot of people may not understand how involved you can get and how important it is to understand your rights in the position. So I've seen a lot more interest in criminology and our judicial system, especially juvenile justice, from our thing. So I think that's what I've seen mostly out of it. I think restorative justice is such an important part of juvenile and adult incarceration. I think, there's too much just sit and think about it. People don't think about it, they just stew on it. And there's nothing, you don't evolve by just sitting there. Like having open conversations about what's going on. Because I feel like racial bias, there is so many assumptions. Like when you don't talk about it, like you'll have these, honestly, you'll have race wars and things because they're not talking to each other. And two people from two separate races, two walks of life can have the exact same issue and could bond on so many things, but they don't talk to each other about it. And with restorative justice, having these straight conversations like, oh man, you're having these issues too, and so am I, and having these open conversations, even with victims and stuff like that, like the lack of discussion, the lack of conversation has done nothing but just compile and worsen the issue. So as far as racial bias and everything, it's all about conversations because I just think so many people aren't communicating on what's going on and they're making these divides that shouldn't exist and like realistically like don't exist, but they're so compounded that people just automatically think there's a division. I'm like, oh no, we all bleed red. Like we're all in this, so this division is just imaginary and it's so destructive. So no, restorative justice is absolutely necessary. Like conversations need to be had. When you give somebody a hand up instead of a hand out, like with the restorative justice, you're not saying, oh, no problem, everything's deleted, you're off the hook. Like there's still certain responsibilities you have to take, and understanding like, hey, you're having an issue, you're down on your luck, I'm going to give you this option to earn back some of this trust, some of these responsibility, some of this place in your world. I'm going to help you up. It's kind of, what is that saying, teach a man to fish, he'll feed a man to fish, he'll feed for a day, teach a man to fish, he'll eat forever. Like when you give somebody a second chance and teach them a new skill and understand like, hey, I'm helping you up, it is so much different than, like I said, just sit in a corner and stew on it. And you're not teaching them any new skills. You're basically telling somebody that you're throwing them away and that you don't believe in them anymore. And especially like, I know teen court is obviously juvenile, but I'm very passionate in the adult side too. Like I feel like, when you've done something wrong, but you need to be restored. You need to learn new skills. You need to be, given responsibilities back. You need to be a productive part of the community. But, when you're not putting that restorative part on to juveniles or adults, you're letting people back out in the community that are now even less than they were at the top, and, just in general, like it is such an important aspect to make sure a human feels like a human and that they can contribute to society, because not helping them out just reinforces that they're nothing and they're not going to be anything, and that doesn't do anything for anybody. I think with restorative justice and recidivism is a big deal is the holistic approach when it comes to counseling and really concentrating on the issues that are causing the behavior. If you just concentrate on the action that happened, you're only concentrating on that. But if we have a kid that keeps getting in fights at school or keeps stealing, like what's going on at home? Is their family in need of food? Is that why they're stealing stuff? What is going on at home? Why is this kid fighting all the time? What's going on? It's like, is something is happening at home that makes them angry and they can't express it, so they do that. So you have to find the issue. You have to get mental health counseling. You have to show them that you care, because if you're not addressing the issue, that behavior is going to happen over and over and over again. And I think in a lot of juvenile detention in prisons, all they're talking about is the behavior that got them there, and they're not talking about any of the issues. So, okay, they do their 90 days in juvenile detention, then they're out, but they've never even asked why they did it in the first place, and they're just going to keep redoing it. So, I would obviously recommend anybody to volunteer or at least research restorative justice for adults or juveniles, but juveniles especially, because I think, I don't think most people that are not involved in it understand the detriment it makes when you label a kid a bad kid, or, you know, when they've made a mistake, oh, they're just going to do that again. Like, really humanizing and understanding that, you know, labels affect people. When you start calling people or expecting people, or even if their families had issues, like, oh, you're going to be just like your dad, or you're going to be just like your mom, or anything like that. Like, titles matter, and like assuming kids aren't going to be successful because their parents were successful, or by the color of their skin, or where they live, or anything like that. Like, people are going to rise to the bar that you give them. And, you know, people doing that and lowering it for certain types of kids, yeah, they're going to reach the lowest bar. So you need to raise it. And I think coming to teen court or any diversion program, you really do see the intricacy of each human being. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from. They have family. It affects them. Like, they have a life. They have goals. They have dreams. They have big ones. And I think people need to be reminded of that, especially people that may have had more, dare I say, privilege in their life, and not understand that not everybody may have the life they had. Or, you know, if you didn't have that, like, giving back and being like, hey, I was down there too, you can get out of it. And I think that's the biggest thing for a lot of our kids, is seeing people who have been through a lot of hard stuff out and successful, and seeing like, oh, I can do this. Like, this person is successful even when they messed up like I did, or whatever. So I think that's the biggest thing for me.